Blips and Grips, Gears of Chaos, a time-traveling Nazi smackdown, Brah prologue. So, I'm in the time machine, right? And Blips is all, don't touch the dial's grips. Like I'm some kind of Neanderthal. But it's a time machine. Who can resist fiddling with the knobs? It's like a universal remote, but instead of changing channels, you're changing centuries. Anyway, we end up in 1944, smack dab in the middle of World War II. Nazis everywhere. You know, the whole goose-stepping, swastika-waving routine. And the uniforms. What's with the drab colors? No wonder they lost the war. Who wants to fight a war when you look like you're going to a funeral? So, we're supposed to find some missing radar thingamajig. Blips is all about logic and deductions, like some kind of robot Sherlock Holmes. Me? I just wanna punch a few Nazis. Is that so wrong? They're Nazis. It's like a universal law, if you see a Nazi, you gotta punch 'em. It's like gravity, but with more satisfaction. Anyway, we find the radar thingy, cause a little mayhem along the way, and get out of Dodge. Another successful mission for the Temporal Integrity Task Force team, even if nobody understands what we actually do. It's like, hey, I saved history today. What did you do? Oh, you know, just the usual. Filed some papers, answered some emails. Nobody gets it. Grips, you begged to do a prologue, you promised that you would take it seriously. That's the one and only time you will be allowed to do it. A Seinfeld bit? Seriously? The air crackled with energy as Blips, a small, anxious robot with flickering blue optics, frantically adjusted the dials on the time machine. His companion, Grips, a hulking, one-eyed robot with dented armor, casually juggled live grenades, oblivious to the impending temporal displacement. Grips, for the love of all that is mechanically sound, put those down. Blips squawked, his voice a high-pitched whine. We're about to embark on a highly delicate temporal displacement, not audition for a circus sideshow. But Blips, these little guys are fun. Grips boomed, accidentally dropping a grenade, which exploded harmlessly in a puff of glittery smoke. Blips, with an exasperated sigh, facepalmed. That's it. I'm installing a child safety lock on the armory. He pointed a tiny wrench at the time machine's control panel. Now, focus. We are headed to the year 1944, the height of World War II. According to the updated temporal archive, some crucial piece of technology has gone missing, and the fate of the entire war hangs in the balance. I assume some other travelers interfered. Grips scratched her dented head. World War II? Is that the one with the tiny moustaches and the really loud shouting? Precisely, Grips, Blips confirmed, adjusting his tiny spectacles. A rather unpleasant affair involving excessive nationalism, questionable fashion choices, and an alarming amount of explosions. He paused, then added, now, let's set the temporal coordinates and try not to cause a paradox. Last time we ended up with a timeline where everyone communicated exclusively through interpretive dance. It was awkward. With a flash of blinding light and a sound like 1,000 dial-up modems connecting at once, the time machine lurched violently, sending tools and spare parts flying. Grips screamed, while Blips laughed maniacally. Wahoo! It's back to working correctly again, Grips roared. This beats that time we got stuck in that Renaissance painting. All those naked cherubs kept poking me. Grips, you imbecile. Blips shrieked, clinging to a railing. That was Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. And those were angels, not cherubs. Honestly, your ignorance of art history is appalling. The time machine materialized with a bone-jarring thud in a war-torn European city. Sirens wailed, buildings crumbled, and a dogfight raged in the sky above. Blips and Grips emerged from the machine, covered in soot and looking bewildered. Good heavens, it's even worse than I anticipated, Blips coughed. Remind me to send a strongly worded letter to the Temporal Tourism Board. This is not what I signed up for. Grips, meanwhile, gazed in awe at a burning tank. Wowzers. Look at that big metal buggy go. It's like a monster truck rally, but with more explosions. A squadron of bewildered soldiers surrounded them, pointing rifles and shouting in a language neither robot understood. Blips, waving a tiny wrench, tried to communicate. "Greetings, fellow humans. We come in peace. Do any of you happen to speak binary code? Or perhaps mime?" The soldiers, understandably confused, decided to take the robots prisoner. Blips and Grips were marched through the chaotic streets, past bombed-out buildings and terrified civilians. Grips, however, seemed more interested in collecting shrapnel as souvenirs. "Ooh, shiny," she exclaimed, picking up a jagged piece of metal. "This would make a great bottle opener." Grips, for crying out loud, try to blend in, Blips hissed. "We're supposed to be covert operatives, not walking scrap heaps." They were brought to a makeshift military base, where a stern-looking officer interrogated them. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What is your mission? And why do you smell like burnt toast and motor oil?" Blips, trying to appear harmless, stammered, "We are traveling saleswomen. Yes, that's it. We're here to demonstrate the latest in robotic cleaning technology. This fine specimen here," he gestured to Grips, "is our top-of-the-line model, capable of cleaning up any mess, no matter how explosive." Grips, eager to demonstrate, grabbed a nearby artillery shell and started polishing it vigorously with her metallic arm. "Stop that!" the officer shouted, his eyes widening in alarm. "That's a live munition." The shell slipped from Grips' grasp and clattered to the floor. Everyone in the room dived for cover, expecting a massive explosion. Instead, the shell simply bounced harmlessly, emitting a squeaky sound. "Oops," Grips chuckled. "Looks like I need to calibrate my grip strength." Blips muttered under his breath, "This is going even worse than that time we accidentally started the French Revolution." The officer, now convinced they were harmless lunatics, decided to humor them. He informed them about the missing technology, a prototype radar system crucial for the Allied forces. Blips, intrigued, decided to put his analytical skills to the test. "A radar system, you say?" he chirped. "Fascinating. Grips, it appears we have a mystery to solve." Grips flexed her massive metal arm. "Does it involve punching Nazis? Because I'm really good at punching Nazis." Blips rolled his optics. "I highly doubt it, Grips. But if we do encounter any Nazis, try to refrain from pulverizing them into scrap metal. We're trying to maintain a low profile, remember?" And so, Blips and Grips embarked on their chaotic quest to find the missing radar system, leaving a trail of bewildered soldiers and accidental explosions in their wake. Blips, ever the quick thinker, hatched a plan. Grips, he whispered, create a diversion. Grips, always eager for a bit of mayhem, grinned and ripped a hefty pipe from the cellar wall. With a mighty roar, she charged the soldiers, swinging the pipe like a baseball bat. The soldiers, completely unprepared for a robot uprising in their dingy basement, scattered in panic. In the ensuing chaos, Blips slipped away, his small size allowing him to navigate the confusion unnoticed. He scurried through the base, his internal sensors scanning for the unique energy signature of the missing radar technology. He darted past startled cooks, dodged a speeding jeep, and even narrowly avoided being trampled by a panicked horse. Finally, his sensors beeped wildly, leading him to a heavily guarded tent. Peeking inside, he saw the radar device, a bulky contraption with blinking lights and spinning dials, sitting on a table, surrounded by Nazi officers studying its intricate workings. Blips knew he couldn't simply walk in and grab it. He needed a distraction, and he knew just the robot for the job. He raced back to the cellar, where Grips was still gleefully engaged in a game of whack-a-Nazi with the bewildered soldiers. "Grips," Blips shouted over the din, "I found the radar. But I need you to cause a distraction." Grips, with a mischievous glint in her single eye, dropped the now dented pipe. "With pleasure, Blips." She boomed, and charged out of the cellar with the force of the runaway train. She burst into the mess hall, sending tables and food flying. She picked up a startled chef and tossed him onto the roof. He then proceeded to engage in a spirited food fight, pelting the soldiers with potatoes, sausages, and the occasional exploding pudding. Meanwhile, Blips, taking advantage of the pandemonium, slipped into the tent unnoticed. He quickly detached the radar device, tucking it under his arm, and made his escape, leaving behind a scene of utter chaos. As he rejoined Grips, who was now attempting to juggle live chickens, he couldn't help but grin. "Well done, Grips," he exclaimed. "Now, let's get out of here before things get even more out of hand." With the radar secured and the Nazi base in a state of delightful disarray, Blips and Grips made their escape, leaving behind a legacy of bewildered soldiers, flying food, and the lingering scent of burnt toast and motor oil. Their mission was a success, and they had even managed to punch a few Nazis along the way. All in a day's work for these time-traveling robotic heroes. Epilogue: back in their own time, Blips and Grips were hailed as heroes. Well, as much as two bumbling robots can be hailed as heroes. They receive medals, a commendation from the Temporal Integrity Task Force team, and a lifetime supply of WD-40. Grips, of course, tried to drink his, resulting in a rather spectacular oil explosion. Blips, ever the stoic one, just shook his head and muttered something about needing a vacation. As for the Nazis, well, they never did figure out what happened to their radar. They blamed it on gremlins, spies, and even the weather. The Allies, of course, went on to win the war, thanks in no small part to the timely intervention of two unlikely heroes. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of time and space, a dogfight continued. A chef wondered how he ended up on a roof, and a group of soldiers swore they'd never eat pudding again. Grips, that's how you do a log.